The weather in Boise, Idaho can be extremely variable, from feet of snow to 100-degree temperatures in the summer. And if you're moving here, you may want to know what you're getting yourself into, how that weather is going to impact your life, and how to prepare for the weather that Boise, Idaho brings. So in this video, I'm going to quickly run over the answers to all of those questions and give you a good overview of what the weather is like in the Boise, Idaho area so you can know what to expect when moving here. Now, first, let me just give you a quick overview of Boise, Idaho's weather. My personal opinion is I love Boise, Idaho's weather. We truly get distinct 4 seasons. So in the year, we actually get all 4 seasons. The fall, the summer, spring, and winter are all different. The most similar are the fall and the spring, and those are my 2 favorite times of year because we do get 70 to 80 degree weather with nice crisp mornings, which I personally prefer. And it's just an awesome thing to have if you have never experienced 4 seasons, or you're someone who loves the 4 seasons and truly having to experience all of those. Boise is a perfect place for that. Now, going on to that, Boise gets 200 to 300 days a year of sunshine, which is great. There's not a ton of rain, not a ton of snow. The times that we don't get those sunshines are in the winter when we get inversions, or we're in the fall and spring when we get some weather that does roll through. Now in the winters, Boise does get cold winters. Depending on where you're moving from, we can have 20 to 30 degree weather throughout the winter. We get shorter days. It can get dark at 5:30. And then again, like those inversions, which I'll go into detail later. The other thing is in the summer, we get 100-degree days or even weeks at a time, which can be hard for a lot of people, and it is dry. Now I'm going to go into each season individually and give you some more insights into how those seasons are and then what to do about it if you are moving here and you're not used to what to expect. Before we jump into each season, my name is Brady Fagel. I am a local realtor in the Boise area. Me and my team would love to help you relocate here or answer any questions that you may have if you're looking to move to Boise. If you want to reach out to me any time of the day, any day of the week, feel free to shoot me a text, shoot me a call, shoot me an email. I'm happy to sit down and answer any questions, and I look forward to getting to know you. Now, the first season I'm going to go into detail on is spring. The average high temperature from March to May in the springtime is 55 to 65 degrees. In the spring, in one day, you can have all 4 seasons. So spring is the most variable when it comes to temperatures and conditions of the weather. You can wake up and there's nice, cool, brisk 20 to 30 degree mornings, and then you can have an afternoon where it's 75 degrees. So knowing how to be prepared for that, if you're not used to that, is knowing that in the mornings you may need a jacket, you may need to be dressed warm, but it has to be layered so that in the afternoon you're not sweating and miserable at work or outside or whatever you're doing in the afternoon. Having a sweatshirt or a sweater or just a zip jacket that you can take off midday, that's super helpful in the springtime in Boise. I know that's a big problem, and a lot of times waking up in the morning to snow and then it's melted in 50 to 60 degrees by the afternoon can be a little bit difficult if you're not used to it. So preparing for that variability, whether that's getting a new wardrobe or just mentally preparing for the differences in the spring. Now, setting all of that aside and the variability and some of the difficulties that come with spring, it is an amazing time of year. There's cherry blossom trees, which are one of my favorite things during that springtime. If you go out to Caldwell, downtown Caldwell has cherry blossom trees all over downtown, and it's absolutely beautiful. As you're driving through Meridian or Boise, there's lots of trees all over the neighborhoods or downtown, and those trees and those flowers blossoming is just a beautiful part of spring. There's a reason that it is called the City of Trees, and that's a big plus of the springtime. The other thing that spring brings in Boise is those afternoon thunder showers. So the typical afternoon 3, 4, 5 p.m. thunder showers can roll in. You can get some thunder and lightning and some big bursts of rain. That's something to be prepared for in Boise as well. But those thunderstorms can also bring in huge windstorms. Sometimes you'll get amber alerts in the Boise area for windstorms coming through and blowing a ton of dust through the city. It's a little bit more rare, but we can get these cells that come through and blow in a bunch of wind with those thunderstorms. And again, Boise in the springtime is one of my favorite times of year. This is a great time to get out and enjoy the parks that are offered all over the Boise area. Almost every neighborhood has a park. All of downtown Boise has tons of huge parks to go and enjoy. And then we of course have the Greenbelt, but that's a little bit more detail into the spring weather. And again, preparing for spring is just knowing that you may have to have a little bit different of a wardrobe, and just being prepared that you may have to wear a jacket in the morning and a t-shirt in the afternoon. But other than that, the springtime is one of my favorite times of year in the Boise area. Now, the second season I have is Boise summers. So Boise summers run from about June to the end of August, and the average temperature ranges from about 85 to 95 degrees, so a little bit hotter. Heat waves are not uncommon in Boise. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that Boise can get 100 degree plus weather for days, or even we've had it weeks at a time. Now, I'd say typically in the Boise area, we get about probably 5 days every year where it's about 100 degrees or that almost unbearable heat. It's not going to be like Arizona or Texas or some of those southern states that can get into that 110s, 120s. But Boise, on average, I'd say does get about 3 to 5 days of 100 plus degree weather in the summer. There has been years where we have gotten more than that, and there are some times where it can just sit at 90 to 100 degrees for the entire month of July and part of August. So Boise, even though it has cold winters, it has hot summers as well. The other thing that comes with summers is that Boise is dry. So not only do you get the heat in Boise, but it's a really dry climate in Boise. So being prepared with having some of the right chapsticks or lotions, if you're coming from a different climate, that can be a little bit of an adjustment period. And finding the right lotion or chapstick or thing to prepare for that dryness can help you in the long run. Now, to combat that heat in Boise, there's a lot of things offered in the Boise area. Almost every single neighborhood in Boise has some sort of community pool. There's public pools, and then Boise also has the Boise River, which hundreds, thousands of people float the Boise River from just outside of downtown all the way through downtown area. That's a super popular thing to do in the summer to cool off and escape some of those 90, 100 degree weather days during those summer times. As I mentioned, the subdivisions have community pools. Almost every subdivision has that, and it's a super awesome amenity. If you don't live in a neighborhood that has a pool, oftentimes one of your friends or your kids' friends has a neighborhood that does have a pool. So that's an awesome way to escape some of the heat. The other thing that Boise offers is that we do have a water park here. So if you have kids, it's an awesome thing to do in the summer. They have season passes if your kids are old enough, or you have a way to get them there every day. It's an awesome tool. I know when I was growing up here and I was a kid, that was one of my favorite things, is that in the summertime, I knew that I could go to the water park every day with friends, cool off, escape the heat, and have friends, and it gives the parents a little bit of a break. The other popular thing in the summertime when it is those heat waves is to escape to the mountains. So one of the most popular places is McCall and Cascade, which is about an hour, hour and a half north of the Boise area. In the winter, it has awesome skiing up there, but there's lakes up in the mountain area of McCall and Cascade. So if you can escape up there to camp, rent a cabin, or just hang out for the day, just make it a day trip up there, it's an awesome way to escape some of those 100, 110 degree days. And another popular thing is up on the way to McCall and Cascade is some of the best whitewater rafting in the country. So another big plus is making a weekend trip up there where you can hit McCall, hit the lakes up there, and whitewater raft, all within an hour to an hour and a half outside of the Boise area in the summer. Summer can also bring a lot of fire and smoke. As you know, it's called the Treasure Valley. So it's a valley, and sometimes smoke can come in and sit in the valley. A lot of the smoke up from California, Oregon pushes up into the Boise area. And then, of course, Idaho does get fires as well. So the summertime can bring a lot of smoke. And there has been years where the sky is blacked out or it's orange and red and the air quality is horrible. So if you do have asthma or you have kids that have asthma, that summertime smoke is something to prepare for and know about. Every single year, we almost always get bad smoke. Some years are worse than others, but that July through mid-August, late August time of year, you combine the smoke with that super hot heat. It's just another reason to escape up into the mountains and get away from some of that smoke if you can, and get away from some of that heat. So the next season is fall. In fall, the average temperature is from 60 to 75 degrees, so a little bit warmer than that spring, and fall is actually one of my favorite times in the Boise area. The only thing that I don't like about fall is that it's leading up into winter and the days are getting shorter. But fall, from about September to October, mid-October, it's almost perfect weather. It's 70, 75 degrees almost every single day. You get a little bit of crisp in the morning where it's a little bit cooler, but it's not quite like spring where you need a jacket. You can wear just like a light sweatshirt. And then in the daytime, it's nice and sunny. It's 70 to 75 degrees. You can eat outside. You can go to coffee shops. You can go for your walks. And all while that's happening, the leaves are changing to their orange and red and yellow colors. And as I mentioned, in the spring, where we get a lot of those florals and the blossoming trees, in the fall, you of course get the leaves changing. Being the city of trees, the fall time, combining all of that with that awesome temperature, sunny days, and the beautiful trees, it's my favorite time of year. Once you start getting into late fall and coming into winter, it can vary from year to year. I know last year it was 75 to 80 degrees all the way up what felt like into November. So that was a little bit of a different year. I know there's sometimes on Halloween that it's 10 degrees and it's snowing, and then there's some years where it's 65 to 75 degrees on Halloween. Once you get past mid-October, the weather can vary from year to year and it can get a little bit colder. So being prepared more with those smaller jackets, being prepared for some of that cold, even some sprinkles of snow. Even though that snow will most likely melt by mid-afternoon, that late fall, early November is really when some of that colder weather finally starts moving in and you start losing some of that awesome 70 to 75 degree weather that you had in early fall. Now, the last season in Boise is winter. And this is the one that I think most people moving here, if you're moving from places like Texas or California, places that you're not used to having snow, not used to having that cold weather, this is the one that you want to be most prepared for, want to know the most about. So winter in Boise, the average temperature is 20 to 30 degrees. And with that brings snow. It can vary widely, but I think that is a good estimate of what Boise brings year to year, is that 20 to 30 degrees. Oftentimes in the winter, it'll be 45, even 50 degrees sometimes. As far as the cold goes, Boise is a lot more mild than a lot of other places like up north, Chicago, Minnesota, some of those eastern, northeastern states. But if you're moving from a place like California or even Seattle or Oregon where you're not used to winter and cold and snow, it can be a big change. And this is one of the biggest deal breakers that I see from people moving here is they move to Boise, they're here for spring, summer, fall, and they think it's great and they can handle it. And then they get to winter and they realize that they really just hate the winter. Not only is it cold, but the days get a lot shorter. It gets dark here at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So there's people who they'll go to work in the dark and they'll come home in the dark, and then it's snowing and cold and they just find out that they can't handle that. Now, there's a lot of great things that do come with the weather and the snow. If you do like to ski or you've never skied or snowboarded before or even just tubed, there's lots of opportunity around Boise. We have Bogus Basin, which is just a 45-minute drive outside of Boise that offers ski lifts, snowboarding, tubing, and it's only a 45-minute drive from the Boise area. What I mentioned in the summer, McCall and Cascade, they have some amazing ski resorts up there that are a little bit more spendy, but if you're somebody who loves to ski and snowboard, those are amazing places to go and escape to in the winter. So that snow can bring some awesome opportunity if that's something that you enjoy in the Boise area. Now, with a lot of that snow can bring some difficult driving. I know that some people that scares and they think that I have to get a four-wheel drive vehicle, I can't go anywhere. But realistically, Boise on average, I would say there's only about 5 to 10 days out of the entire winter that driving is even an issue. Of course, there are days where there may be more ice patches or neighborhoods may be worse, but on average, the winters here in the town of Boise itself, it's really not that big of a problem. And going out and purchasing a whole new four-wheel drive vehicle and spending all of that money, risk not being able to buy a house and get lending approval, doing all of that is something that is not a necessary step when moving to Boise. Now, if you want to go out and get snow tires and you want to just stay in for the few days out of the year that you don't feel safe driving, that's a lot better of a choice than it is to go out and buy a new vehicle. Now, if you have the means to go and buy a four-wheel drive vehicle and it makes you feel so much more safe, then by all means go out and do that, but I definitely don't suggest that it's a requirement. The other thing with winter is not being prepared when it comes to the cold. 20 to 30 degrees is not that cold, but Boise can get into the zeros or even the negatives, and having a good winter coat is something to prepare for when moving to Boise. This means that having a down coat, one that's going to keep you warm when it's windy and it's, negative 10 degrees in the Boise area. Now, that doesn't happen a ton, but it's just something to be prepared for, especially if you're going outside. You don't have to break the bank. There's lots of places like Sierra Trading Post or even REI or a few stores within the Boise area that have discounted winter jackets. You can even go to Goodwill or some of those other places. There's ways to find coats that are not extremely expensive. Now, the other thing that Boise brings in the winter that I mentioned a little bit earlier is that there's inversions. So Boise being the Treasure Valley, it's a valley, and in the winter, sometimes what happens is we get inversions. And what it basically is that the clouds get stuck up against the mountains and they get sucked into the valley of Boise. And so for days or sometimes weeks at a time, the clouds in the atmosphere are just stuck in Boise, bringing bad air quality, dim, dark days for days or weeks at a time. And it's just gloomy and the air quality is not great and it's cloudy and it's just not the funnest time of the year. I hate inversions in the Boise area, but being prepared for that and knowing that they don't last that long, it's usually only a few days, it rarely goes into weeks. Now, a way to escape those inversions is to get up above it. So going to Bogus Basin, it can be extremely beautiful. I remember the very first time I ever saw this, I went up to Bogus Basin when we had an inversion and we were literally above the clouds. You could see for miles and miles and miles and the sun was shining and it looked like you were floating on clouds. It was absolutely beautiful. So escaping to those mountains, getting up, going snowshoeing, going skiing, even just escaping to the lodge and having lunch and a drink at Bogus Basin, or going to McCall and Cascade and getting out of the Boise area to get some sunshine, to get out of that inversion is a great way to escape that weather when it comes time. Now, I went through each season individually and gave you a little bit of detail on how those seasons can affect you and a little bit of how to prepare for them. But the biggest thing that is going to impact your life is that if you can, rent and stay here for a little bit in the Boise area. There are lots of people that get here and they can't handle the weather, or they don't like it, or they find out something other than the weather that they don't like. So the best approach, that if it is possible, is moving to Boise and just renting, whether that's for a year or 6 months, or it's just for the winter to make sure that you do enjoy it and you can handle it, is something that I advise. And it's a really good tool to find out and not waste a bunch of time and money moving here and then realizing later on that you can't handle it, or you don't like the weather, or you just miss where you came from and you miss those warm weathers, or you miss the rainy weather, whatever it may be. That is the biggest thing that I would say when it comes to Boise weather. Now, the other things to consider are, of course, clothing. You may have to get a completely new wardrobe or add things to your wardrobe to prepare for some of the weather in Boise, whether that's the winter jacket or having more sweaters and light jackets for the fall and the spring. So knowing to prepare for that. The other thing is, if you do have health concerns, if bad air quality is something that is not good for your life, knowing that in the summer we get smoke and in the winter we get inversions, preparing for that before moving to Boise, or even just the high heat and the cold. I know me, I have what's called Raynaud's, so my hands get extremely cold. Even little things like that, knowing that that can impact your health and being prepared for that before moving to the Boise area.